Okay, Parshas Nasso, 748. So Parshas Nasso happens to be the longest parsha in the Torah. There are 176 psukim in Parshas Nasso. 176 psukim in Parshas Nasso, which is the longest parsha in the Torah. Coincidentally, or probably not coincidentally, there are 176 psukim in the longest chapter of Tehillim, which is 119. There are 176 psukim, and the longest masechta in Shas is Baba Basra, has 176. So it starts on Beis. So it's 100. But all the masechtas start on Daf Beis. The last Daf of Baba Basra is Kufay and Vav, which is also 176. So there you find that both in the Chumash and in the Gemara and in Tehillim, the longest one is 176. The significance of which escapes me because I have no idea. I don't know what 176 is. I've never seen any explanation for it, but there it is. So we're starting on Parshas Nasso. Now, if you notice, Parshas Bamidbar, there's a lot of counting, which we had spoken about, and then after counting the Jewish people, the Gemara goes, the Torah goes into the Levium, and there are three Levi families: Gershon, Kehas, and Merari. And the Torah talks about what each one of these Levi families, because they carried the Mishkan. So you have Gershon, Kehas is the middle brother, and Merari. Now, Kehas becomes the most prominent one. Middle one is the most prominent one. Now, I'm only mentioning this coincidentally that I also have two brothers, and I'm the middle one. But I'm just mentioning that coincidentally. But Kehas was the most prominent one. His brothers probably did not gang up on him like my brothers did on me, for good reason, by the way. I don't say that they didn't have their reasons. And but Gershon, Kehas, and Merari are the three brothers. Now I want to show you two things. First of all, each one, they're the families of the Levium. Each family had an assignment of what they carried in the Mishkan. Gershon carried the hardware. They carried the poles, and they carried the software. They carried the curtains and the various tapestries and draperies. That's what Gershon carried. Merari carried the hardware. They carried the poles, the beams, the hardware. Kehas, the middle one, they carried the holy ad. They carried the Aron Kodesh, the menorah, the holiest utensils. So Kehas, the middle brother, is seen as being the most prominent, and that's how the previous Parsha ends. The previous Parsha ends with the assignment of the Kehas, what they were carrying, that they're carrying the menorah and the what do you call it, the Mishkan, and all the utensils that went around with the main utensils of the Mishkan. Then the Torah starts on page 748. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Leimar, Nasso es Rosh b'nei Gershon gam heim l'beis avosam v'shosam. Count the, and it tells us a count of the family of Kehas in last week's Parsha. It says, and also count the family of Gershon. So, you guys have learned enough to see every word of Chumash, every letter, every word of Gemara. There's never anything that's redundant. There's always a reason why. Why did they write that, and why didn't they write something else? Here, the Mefarshim talk about the word gam. Nasso es Rosh b'nei Gershon gam heim, also them. Why also? Just say Nasso es Rosh b'nei Gershon. Once you've counted the others, count them also. Why gam? What is the gam? Okay, so you could, the plain meaning is, we counted them, now we're also going to count them. Moshe, can't trouble you make it a little cooler. I'm nervous energy. So what do you call it? So why is the gam? What's the gam? What do you say?
I would say that when they use gam, it's said that second is as important as the first.
Ooh, nice. It's real. I should be absent more often. What do you call it? The gam is to tell you. You might think, well, come join us. Come on in and join us, guys. Everybody got a seat? Everybody got a chumash? You got Griffin. You see where we are? Page 748. So that's exactly what the commentaries say. Imagine. Let me ask you a question. You've been on planes. You've flown. Who's more important? In your heart, who's more, the pilot or the guys who are loading baggage? Yeah, right. Some people say the baggage. Yeah, I can fly a plane. I still can't figure out how to get baggage from one place to another, right? And they can't either, apparently. Yeah. So the truth of the matter is, the pilots are more important. I've even looked at these guys. Sometimes the flight attendants. I have nothing against these guys, but when they're the girls come around, handing you a hot napkin, one of those hot things to wipe on your, But when guys come around doing it, and I just like, okay, all right, but I could think of, no, I mean like, I could think of a cooler profession, it's like, okay, listen, to each his own, but in my heart of hearts, like, and sometimes I see these older guys, they're right. I mean, who are them compared to the pilot? Right? The pilot, you need the pilot. These guys are coming around, giving you a tray, giving you food and that sort of thing. The answer is, if it's under normal circumstances, maybe. But what about if you're going to fly the presidential plane? How would you feel if you're loading the baggage on the presidential line? President travels. So he travels with about 200 people. He's got his people and the press. It's the whole. How would you feel if you're loading the baggage over there? That's a little different when you're loading the baggage for the king, or you're loading the baggage, or you're serving the royal family. It's like, then you feel a little different. This is the Torah's emphasizing we're all serving Hashem. Gam, exactly what Israel said. Gam b'nei rosh b'nei Gershon gam hem. Not everybody's going to carry their own kodesh. Not everybody's going to be the leader of the community, the rabbi of the community, but everybody's got a job. You're the gabbai. Who's more important for the shul, the rabbi or the gabbai? The rabbi, maybe, right? Rabbi Salinger just told me he knew somebody who wasn't doing well in second grade. Kid was just a mess. He said that was his words. The kid was just a mess. So the parents came to talk to the second grade teacher. They said, "How is he ever going to succeed in life?" They said, "Don't worry about it. He just needs a good secretary." Because the secretaries basically run the business. The guy who's a multimillionaire today. That second grader's a multimillionaire today, and he forgot all about his teacher. But the second grader's mega bucks. That's how he put it. That's how Rabbi Salinger put it. You need a good secretary. Okay, so the gabbai generally runs the shul. But who's the rabbi of the community? Is more popular. No, you're the gabbai. You have your job. You're the balkore. You have your job. You're the guy who runs the school. You have your job. You're the guy who cleans the halls. You have your job. Because we're doing it for the king. It's not that I'm doing it for somebody else. I may not feel good about myself, but if we're doing it for the king, that's something else. Okay, now let's go on, because now we're going to get to the main issue here. Take a look at Pasuk Yud. Skip to Parak Hey. Parak Hey Pasuk Yud. It'll be count of the people, and on page 750. 752. So here the Torah talks about tithing. Various ideas in the tithing process. And then at the end of the pasuk, if you look at 3 lines from the bottom, the ishes kadosh of lo yihiyu. How does the article translate? It's a funny turn of phrase. A man's holies shall be his. We'll see what that means. Ish asher yitein lakohen lo yiyeh. A man who gives to the kohen, it shall be his. What does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is the left column, about 6 lines from the bottom. Left column. If you find it, please show the person next to you. If you find it, please show the person next to you. V'ishes kadoshav lo yihiyu. What does that mean? Lefi shenamru matnos kahuna v'levia, because the Torah describes the gifts that you have to give to a kohen and a Levi. You guys are aware that there is a process. Page 752. There's a process whereby you have to give things to the Kohanim and the Levim. When the land was divided up, the Kohanim and the Levim were not given land. They were given cities, but they did not have agricultural plots. So the Kohanim and the Levim are relying on the people. So there are certain things that you have to give to the Kohanim, certain things you have to give to the Levium. There's Truma, and there's Meiser, and a Kohen does the redemption of the firstborn. I just did a redemption last week. I redeemed the firstborn last week, 380 shekels. And so there are various things that you have to give to the Kohen, give to the Levi. Now, Levi, you give 10% of your produce. Levim get a flat 10%. That's all they get. The Kohanim get the Truma, they get the cuts of meat, certain cuts of meat. If you besides, I'm not talking about the sacrifices in the base of English. If you slaughter a cow so that you can have a backyard barbecue, there are 3 parts of ordinary animals. And we're not talking about sanctified animals now. Ordinary animals, there are 3 parts that have to be given to a Kohen. There's the Zroa, L'chayayim, and Keva. The forearm, which is a certain cut of meat from the forearm of the animal. The L'chayayim, which is the jawbone and apparently includes tongue. And the Keva is a certain part of the stomach. Somebody told me that a sirloin steak is included. But so for example, if any of you like tongue, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, if you want to eat tongue, it's only available in one place. Guess where? You got to go to the Kohanim and buy it. Kohanim, you automatically, every time, Griffith, you shecht an animal, you're going to give your favorite Kohen. I'm not saying who it should be. I'm just saying your favorite Kohen. You're going to give him the tongue, and you give him the gifts. You're going to give matnos kahuna. And anybody else, a Yisrael, who wants to eat it, he's going to have to purchase them for a Kohen. And between me and you, there are no discounts. So these are things that a Kohen gives. Now, which Kohen do you give it to? Says the Torah over here, Lefisha Nemar matnos kahuna v'levia. The Torah describes the gifts for Kohanim and Leviim. Yochol, you might have thought, Yavo v'itlu bizroa. You might have thought that the Kohanim and Leviim could come to your house and help themselves to their stuff. They could take it by force. Talmud lomar v'ishes kadoshav lo yiyu. A person is entitled to his holy things, meaning magid shetovas hana'ason leba'alim. The benefit of giving it. There's something. Sometimes when you give somebody something, there's an underlying benefit here. If I give my gifts to a certain coin, if you give your tongue or the what do you call it, the meat to a certain coin, so there's likely to be a benefit. For example, if I'm driving past the bus stop and I only have room for one person in the car, and there's you and another guy who has not given me the meat because he gave it to somebody else, well, who am I likely to give the ride to? Right. So that's what's called tovas hana. There's a benefit, not who am I likely, by the way, between me and you. Don't even try getting in the car if you didn't give me your stuff, okay? I say likely because I'm being soft. But that's the tovas hana leba'alim. Ve'od midrashim harbe darshu. Now look at the next line. That's the first idea here. Umedrash hagoda v'ishes kadoshav lo yiyu. What does that mean? Misha ma'akev ma'asrosav v'leino nosdan. One who does not give away his tithes, lo yiyu ha'maisros. He will have a tithe. Meaning, if you have $100,000, you should give away $10,000. For example, if you don't give away that $10,000, you're going to end up with only $10,000. That means if you don't give away your money the way you should, or you don't give away the produce the way you should, lo yihya, then you're going to have that percentage is going to end up by you. That's what Rashi's bringing down the medrash. So now I want to tell you an astonishing medrash. An astonishing medrash. And it sounds bizarre. And then we're going to see that it's not quite as bizarre as you think it is. The medrash says there was a man who did not separate his tithes religiously. He was cutting corners. He wasn't giving away as much as he should. And one day he was gripped by what's called a ruach ra'ah. Ruach ra'ah means a spirit of folly, call it for lack of a better term. And he took a club, and he walked into he had a wine cellar, and he took his club, and he walked into his wine, so he started randomly smashing his own wine barrels. So his son walked in, and apparently his son said, "What are you doing?" And the father hit the son. So the son grabbed the club, he says, "Watch this," and he started smashing wine barrels also. And they started smashing up wine barrels. Why? Because he didn't tithe properly. That's what the Medrash says. Okay. Now I want to ask you, have you ever met anybody who's done that? Have you ever met anybody who's walked into the house and started trashing their living room furniture? No. You ever met anybody who's gone out to their car and started smashing windows in his own car? You never see that sort of thing. Where do we find it? You ever? Huh?
Bad investments.
Absolutely. You ever see? Did you or anybody you know ever make a really bad investment, and then you turn around? Elio, it's not a. It's yeah. And then and something happens, and then you say to yourself, "What was I thinking?" Didn't that ever happen to you in life that you said, "What was I thinking? What was going through my head when I did this? I don't know where's my seichel? Where's my head at?" Didn't that ever happen to you? There's a mistake. There's a very common mistake. When you come up with a good idea, you think to yourself, "Ooh, it worked out. Hashem gave me blessing. I had the idea, and Hashem blessed the endeavor. I have an idea for I'll start selling books out of my garage." And then it turns into Amazon. So, the Torah attitude is, well, listen, I had the idea, but Hashem blessed the endeavor with all the success. False. Where'd you get the idea from? Hashem sometimes, we're always jump in a stage late. Hashem drops the idea in your head. Where do you get the idea from? And sometimes to manipulate us, Hashem will drop it, and then we're turning around later and say, what was I thinking? What was going through my head at the time? I can't believe that I did that. What was I thinking? The answer is, you're right. Where did you get the idea from? Kosh Baruch Hu dropped the idea in your head. So the Medrash is telling you that it's an exaggerated way. A guy takes the thing and he starts smashing barrels. You never made bad investments. You never did something foolish in your life that you went and turned around and said, "What? I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I shot a spitball right at the principal." It's one thing at the teacher, but what was I doing? Just because Josh dared me? So I nailed the principal. What was I thinking? What was I? So where did the idea come from? And the same thing when it comes to investments. And the same thing when it comes to life decisions. Same thing when it comes to deciding who you're going to marry. You say oy vey. and sometimes later you say, "What was I thinking?" Right? So you should know that Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz. You've heard Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, one of the biggest poskim in American post. You've heard of him, Rabbi Berkowitz? So he said, any man, you listening, guys? Okay, here you go. Yeah, he'll take it to the bank. Right? Any man who sometimes during the first year of marriage doesn't think to himself, "I made a mistake," is a liar. Not my words, his words. That's right. That's right. It doesn't have to be the first year. It could be the first week. It could be the first month. It could be the first 25 years. At some point, it's normal. It's normal. And you should know, by the way, I always tell guys when you get married, I'll give you a priceless piece of advice. You're going to experience, no matter how long you've known somebody, no matter a shidduch, no matter how long you've known somebody, you're going to experience when you get married a certain point, usually early on, where you could have a fight or a disagreement, or you're just not seeing eye to eye, something, and you get a really sinking feeling. Like, boy, I think this was a mistake. I mean, I think I blew it big time. Don't panic. That's very normal. It's normal. It's actually normal. And then you'll see, next thing you know, things get better. And what happens is you get gradual chunks of time where, you go for a few days where you can barely sleep. You go, then it gradually, and eventually you get to the point where you realize, yes, the doubts are gone. This is the one I was meant to fight with through eternity, right? And you become very settled at that point. At that point, you say, yeah, that's that. But you should know, in the early days of marriage, it's very, 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 very frightening. And you could ask yourself, what was I thinking? And you should know that often a Kodesh Baruch Hu put the thought in your head to marry her, because it turns out she's the best. She's the best thing for you. She's the reason you won't end up in prison. And therefore, she is the best thing for you. And the same thing when it comes to investments. And that's what the Medrash is telling you. A guy could go smashing barrels. What idiot does something like that? The answer is, who dropped the thought in his mind? He had a ruach ra. The Medrash says he had this ruach ra. Okay, now look what happens next. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lebor. Daber el Bnei Yisrael. Now, there's a lot of misconception here, guys, so we got to get this clear. There's a lot of misinformation on this next section. Vaydaber el Bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem ish kisiste ishto. Any man whose wife becomes unloyal, disloyal, umal amal, she rebels against her husband. She commits an act, how does the Eretz go translate it? She commits an act of treachery against her. She goes astray and she commits an act of treachery. This is the famous sota. This is the woman who is a sota. And a sota is, sorry, I skipped one thing before I go. That last puzzle, before we get to the woman. What happens, what's eventually going to happen to the sota, by the way? She drinks the water. And then what happens? She does not explode. That's the misconception. So she does not. In the word, everybody thinks this is a Monty Python after dinner mint, right? And she doesn't explode. She swells up. If she needs to die, she swells up. It's not like, well, head to deck. She drank the water. Look out! No, it's not. She doesn't explode. If she dies, she dies of a painful stomach ill. We'll see in a second. But I forgot one point. Back on the previous pasuk, and everybody says the same thing. She blows up. Not too much TV, guys. So on page 752, back at the bottom line, one more part. I forgot to mention one thing here. So it says, Visa Ishas Kadoshav Lo Yeh. So there, Chafetz Chaim says, there was once a man who had 3 friends. He was very close with Ruvain. He was okay with Shimon. Levi was, the least of his friends. Okay. One day, he gets summoned to come to the king. And there's some sort of charges against him. He has to stand trial before the king. So Reuven, his best friend, says, I ain't going anywhere near there. You're on your own. Shimon, who's not as good a friend, he says, well, I'll escort you to the gates. That's it. And Levi, who's the least of his friends, says, I'll go in with you. So Chafetz Chaim says, those 3 people represent money, relatives, and Torah and mitzvahs. The thing we love most in this world is money. My relatives, they're okay. They're not money. They're not money, but whichever one is higher on your list. And the last one is Torah and mitzvahs. Which, we do our mitzvahs, we learn our Torah, but sometimes we have a rather tenuous connection to them. When a person dies, he's got to go to the king. He's got to stand trial. He's got to go into the courtroom. Those he loves most, his money, his gold, his possessions, his material wealth, that stops. They abandon him the minute he dies. Can't take that with you. His relatives, they take him to the gates. They bury him. But they can't go in with you. The only thing that goes in with a person is his Torah and his mitzvahs. The Torah that he studied and the mitzvahs that he's done. And that's why it says, V'ishes kadoshav lo yihiyu. The holy things, those should be for you. That alludes to the holy things that a person's engaged in this world. The person's learned Torah, he's done mitzvahs, he's put on tefillin, he davened, he was good to people, that sort of thing. That a person takes with him. Other than that, a person takes nothing with him. Okay, now let's go to the sota. So we have a man, ish kisiste ishto malo mal. Now, the wife has been unfaithful, and the husband is not sure about it. Take a look at Pasuk Yudalid. Ve'avar alav ruach kina, a spirit of, how does he translate it? A spirit of jealousy, like the word kina means. A spirit of jealousy. Ve'kine esishto vehi nitma'a. O avar alav ruach kina ve'kine esishto vehi lo nitma'a. A man warns his wife. Now, before we read the psukim, let's say exactly what's happening here, because there are a couple of fundamentals that we need to get to. A man says to his wife, he sees her, he doesn't like the way she's talking to another man, or maybe she had a Shabbos guest and she spent a little too much time chit-chatting with him. At some point, the husband says to his wife, don't be alone with Ruvain. He gives her a specific warning on a specific person. And then the wife is isolated. At some point, there is testimony that she was seen alone behind closed doors with Ruvain. At that point, she's brought to the Beis HaMikdash. They take Hashem's name and write it on a parchment. The parchment is then dropped into water. Hashem's name dissolves, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Hashem's, what do they call the ineffable name? And they drop it in the water, and she drinks the water. And one of two things is going to happen. Either she's going to die, not explode. She's going to die of a painful stomach illness. Or if she's innocent, then According to one opinion in the Gemara, if she didn't have children, she'll have children. According to another opinion in the Gemara, no, that's not going to happen. But if she had difficult births, she'll have easy births. If she didn't have sons, she'll have sons. But not that she's going to go from 0 to 60 and have children if she didn't have children. That's the two opinions in the Gemara. Okay, so it's either going to have a positive result or it's going to have a negative result. The question everybody asks is, why does it say in the first pasuk, the top line says, if his wife committed treachery against him, yet we don't know that she has, because she may be innocent. So why does the Torah say when she strays and she commits a treachery, Ma'al Bamal, she's rebelled against her husband? Why would the Torah describe it in those terms if she hasn't happened yet? She may be innocent. She may actually end up with children. Yeah.
Well, it's only because she goes against her husband's words after he said something.
Excellent. Even earlier, the fact not only that she went against the husband's word, in other words, there are different levels of treachery. There's one level of treachery where she committed adultery. There's another level of treachery where she disobeyed her husband. There's a third level of treachery where she even got to the point that the husband had to say something to her. Why do I even have to warn you about that? The fact, even in a house, parents leave the house for the evening, and they turn to one of the sons, and they say to him, don't get wild in the living room. Why'd they say it to him and not to him? They know him.
He broke the vase.
He's the one who broke the vase last time, and he's the one who with the incident with the noodles, and he's the one, right? So you're already treacherous, right? You're the treacherous one. That's already a treachery. The fact that they even have to warn you is a treachery. That I even have to suspect you is a treachery. So Torah telling you, number one, she's done something wrong by even being suspected. And like Griffin said, and now she's done even more, that she was isolated with the guy. So what happens? She's alone with this guy who the husband, what do you think? They're talking philosophy back there? Right? Well, take him off to the Beis Hamikdash and let's see what happens in the Beis. Now we'll see. And she drinks the water. Now, she could get out of it by admitting she committed the crime. But if she admits she committed the crime, the husband divorces her and she loses any monetary compensation. If she insists on her innocence, then she drinks the water. And Hashem's name is going to have an effect on her one way or the other, positive or negative. At the end of the day, now, there are two big questions here. Question number one is, we never find in the Torah that if you go to a halachic authority, let's say you have a question in your kitchen. Your fleshik knife fell into a hot milchik pot with an onion and, one of these good halachic shilas. So you go to a Rav to ask him, is the knife treif? Is it called? What's the halacha? What does the Rav do? Never in history has a prophet, even the Nevi'im, never, 1 second, I feel it. The knife is kosher. Right? The knife is treif. They don't do that. You open up the books and you look around and you see what the halacha says in Shulchan Aruch, and that's how they paskin. You paskin based on Shulchan Aruch. There is never anywhere where there is a supernatural intervention in a halachic process. Even a few weeks ago, we learned about the guy who has tsaras, leprosy. What do you do when you have leprosy? And he suspects it. Who do you go to? You go to the Kohen. And by the way, if you come to me, be a good idea if you gave me that meat earlier, sometime down the line. I tend to rule a little stringently when guys are giving the meat to other people. But okay, so you go to the Kohen. And what does the Kohen do? He takes a look at your arm or whatever it is. He says, okay, tahor or tameh. How did the Kohen know it? The Kohen knows the laws of tzaras. He doesn't go and write Hashem's name and drop it on your arm. Why over here? Why does the process change? Go to the Kohen and tell the Kohen, listen, this is what I said. This is what she did. This is what happened. Now, can we live together or not? And the Kohen goes, what do you call it? Well, no. He paskins. Why is this different? No, over here, all of a sudden, we invoke some sort of supernatural process. We're erasing Hashem's name. Why? Why here does the Torah invoke Hashem's name? Anybody have a shot? And nowhere else. Nowhere else in history. Halacha does not work. Halacha doesn't work based on any sort of what he called supernatural means. It's all based on the books, clinical. And over here,
does it have something to do with peace?
Very good. It has to not only with peace, it has to do with the most important area of peace, of shalom, what's called shalom bayis. For the sake of maintaining, imagine you go to the Kohen, and the Kohen listens to the story, and he says, well, what happened? Well, I warned my wife, and she was, we had this guy, and he happens to be pretty handsome, and she's been hanging around with him, and I said, don't. And next thing I know, they were locked in a room for a half hour over there. And the Kohen says, he looks up at Tosfos, and he says, based on Chazaka and Rov and Migu, he gives you a whole drasha over here. He says, she's fine. She's fine. You could live together. She's not been defiled. The husband will never have the true peace of mind of knowing that his wife is really innocent. There's only one way that could happen, that Hashem gets involved. That Hashem, the divine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and the Gemara says, Hashem says, I allow my name to be erased for the sake of Shalom Bayis. And gentlemen, that tells you how important it is, Shalom Bayis. That Shalom Bayis, for a husband and wife to get along, when husband and wife get along well, the divine presence is there. And when they're fighting, the divine presence leaves. And Hashem says, for the sake of maintaining peaceful coexistence between a husband and a wife, I allow my name to be erased. Which is a lesson for us. That every man has to allow his ego to be erased for the sake of Shalom Bayis. Because that's the thing that destroys the home, is the male ego. Problems in marriage, it's the husband. 99% of the time. If there's a problem, a serious problem, it's the husband. The husband is not treating his wife properly. The women will be good. If the man is good, they'll be good. They'll reciprocate. That's a rule. And if a woman is having a trouble, if a woman's in a bad, guy says, yeah, my wife is miserable. She's always in a bad mood. Well, go look in a mirror. I don't mean a physical mirror. That too, that could be. But that's not it. Go look at a personality mirror. Are you interrupting her when she speaks? Are you respecting her more than yourself, like the Gemara says? Do you compliment her on a regular basis? Do you criticize her? Guys ask me, when can you criticize your wife? When and how do you criticize your wife? Right? Like, it's like asking, when and how do you go to Vietnam? Right, to fight in the Vietnam War. When and how do you criticize? Don't criticize. Who said you have to criticize her? Who says you have to criticize her ever? Yeah, but she's doing something I don't like, so work on yourself. And they have an instinct to know, the more you work on yourself, the better they treat you. And the more you criticize, the worse it becomes. That's your fault, not you. The husband, it's a male. So if Hashem allows his name, there's a medrash. Listen to this one. There's a woman came home. A woman went to hear a shir from Rabbi Meir. She went to Rabbi Meir's shir. The medrash says Rabbi Meir was giving a shir Friday night. The woman went to the shir, and she came home late. Apparently her husband was hungry. Said, where were you? She said, I was at Rabbi Meir's shir. So the husband was ticked off. He said, well, go back to Rabbi Meir and spit in his eye. I'm not letting you come home till you set foot in the house till you spit in Rabbi Meir's eye. The woman was not going to go and spit, like somebody would say, go spit in Reb Chaim Kanievsky's eye. Right? Rabbi Meir was bigger. Rabbi Meir was the Gadol Hador. Rabbi Meir was the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. So he goes to, the woman starts walking around outside the base medrash. Rabbi Meir, with Ruach HaKodesh, he saw the woman out there, and through Ruach HaKodesh, the divine, what's it called? How do you translate? Divine spirit rested on Rabbi Meir, and he knew what happened, transpired between the wife and the husband. So Rabbi Meir sees the woman walking around outside. He goes, oh, my eye! Ow, I need some human saliva. Lady, come here, spit my eye 7 times. So she says, are you sure? He goes, yeah, quickly. So she goes, she spits in his eye 7 times. So Rabbi Meir says, okay, now go home and tell your husband, you told me to spit in Rabbi Meir's eye once, I spit in his eye 7 times. So she goes scampering off happily. And Rabbi Meir's disciples were there. They said, okay, what was that all about? Come on. Come on. Yeah, I paid in your eye. What was that all about? So Mary says, well, she had a spat, no pun intended, with her husband, and this is what needed to be done. So the Talmud said, well, why didn't you tell us? We would have applied some physical therapy and to the guy, and I would have accepted his wife back very happily after we got finished with him. What happened here? So Mary says, listen, if Hashem could allow his name to be erased for the sake of Shalom Bayis, so I could allow my dignity to be set aside for the sake of Shalom Bayis. And I'm not kidding, guys. This is the number one interruption. What messes up marriages, because husbands think they know it all, and and it's got to be done their way, and if they're not pleased, they yell and they holler, that sort of thing. That destroys a marriage. And a person has to know if Kodesh Baruch Hu is willing to let his name be erased for the sake of Shalom, a man has to set his name aside also. By the way, I was reminiscing with a friend of mine. You guys have grown up in a generation nowadays. Every other magazine, every other, psychology this, and when raising children is psychology. Parents have to be psychologists. It is psychology, how to raise children. I was reminiscing with a friend of mine. When we were growing up, our fathers weren't psychologists. Our fathers were physical therapists. And they straightened you out good and proper. You got it when you deserve, and believe me, you deserved more. And you got straightened out good and proper, then you went on your way. There was no psychology. There was no psychology in my house, that I could tell you. My father had his left hand was a psychologist. They graduated physical therapy school with. So, and not too often. I only got it maybe 2-3 times in my life. Maybe 3-4 times in my life. Not more than that. Not more than that, because you can't do it all the time, because it doesn't do any good. But when I got it, I knew I deserved it, and I got it, and it was fair, and that took care of it. There was no saying, you're bad, you're just not good. None of that stuff. None of that at all. Okay, one last question. How do women get to this point? Who we're talking about here? We're not talking about some girl at a frat party at Arizona State University. Right? You're not talking about you're not talking about Madonna. We're talking about you're talking about a frum woman who you see on the streets of Eretz Yisrael with a tichel and with 9 children around her buggy, each one all under 4 years old, and she's dressed like she's wearing a tent. And what do you call it? And all of a sudden, her husband name is Kalman Zalman Schnitzel, and he says to her, and all of a sudden he says to her, Bela Chaya Miriam, listen, you better not be alone with Baruch Shimon Shmuel Reuven. Imagine giving this guy an aliyah, what are we talking about over here? You're talking about a family. The worst thing that they ever do is they bench too fast. Oh, I can't believe you didn't say Asher Yatzar from a sitter. Yeah, that's what you're talking about. All of a sudden the husband talk about, that guy over there. Honestly, half the times you go into a frum house, the women have nothing to do with them, and they're on the other side of the table. There's no interaction over. Who are you talking about over here? And if you are talking about a woman, so if you're talking about a woman who's who's running around with clothing allergies, okay, that I understand. But if you're talking about a frum Beis Yaakov girl over here who speaks Yiddish, all she talks about is kreplach, and all of a sudden you're warning her about being a lice. What happened over here? So the Torah's teaching you. You're right. It didn't happen overnight. It's not like one day she was saying Tehillim and the next day she hit a club. It didn't go from 0 to 60. They had a guest at the house one Shabbos. A little chit chat across the table, maybe a little less, more than appropriate. And then they invited this guy. He was an interesting guy. And then they invited him back a couple weeks later. And he helped clear off the table. In the meantime, the husband Friday night, was tired, so he just got horizontal real quick. And the wife was left with this guy. And then the next thing you know, she's pushing to invite him back again because she enjoyed him so much. And the husband is a dreadful bore. And it's got whose Dvar Torah is long, and works better than a sedative. And this guy's clever and witty and what do you call it? And next thing you know, he needs to go back to the house. He thinks the wife volunteers to walk him home. They go automatic. It's like gradual, boom, 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 little increments. That's what the Torah is teaching you. The Torah teaches you maintain the line over here, because that line gets pushed. And when the line gets pushed, I had a guy here once, he told me that he was going to college, and he promised himself, I'm not going to get caught up in that absolutely hefker behavior. Completely, just do anything you want. I said, I promised myself. He said within 3 months he turned into an animal. Guy told me that. It didn't happen overnight. He didn't jump into college, and next thing you know, get trashed. Took it 24 hours. takes time. You got to get adjusted. Got to meet your roommate first. I had a guy here told me his roommate was such an alcoholic. He said this guy had beer everywhere he went. He had beer in the car, beer in class, beer everywhere. He used to, in the morning, he put beer in his Cheerios. And it was just what do you okay, what do you expect? So there are people who mean well, but the next thing you know, they turn into some sort of subhuman. What happened? It didn't happen automatically. And the Gemara says, be careful, because one day you'll do this avera. You take a frum guy. You take a frum guy. The Gemara says, you, the frum guy, me, the frum guy, we, the frum guys. One day you can do this avera. The next day you'll do a bigger avera. The third day you'll bigger avera, and eventually you're going to worship idols. So if you tell me this guy worshipped idols, this guy's such a frum guy. He learns Baba Kama, he worships idols. Well, he didn't start. He didn't close his Baba Kama and go worshiping idols. And went from here, went to there, and then went to that's what happened to her. That's what the Torah is teaching over here. Nobody is immune. That's why the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Al tamin be'atzvecha ad yom moscha. Don't believe in yourself till the day you die. Because anybody could go off. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was the Kohen Gadol for 80 years. And at the end of his life, he became a Sadducee, became a Tzeduki, the reform of the day, after being a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. And he went off at the end of his life. Nobody's immune. That's what the Torah is telling you about this woman. This woman was a good Beis Yaakov girl. She's a wonderful Beis Yaakov. That's why he married her. Well, one thing led to another, and eventually the husband got to the point where he had to warn her. All right. But she doesn't explode, guys. She doesn't explode.